Hey everyone, welcome to this week's astrological report for February 25 through March 3 of 2025. I hope you're all doing well. This week we start things off with the moon entering the dark moon phase of the last lunar cycle. For the next 2 days, the moon is closing out the Aquarius cycle, and then we'll ingress Pisces, reach the sun for the Pisces new moon, and we start a brand new lunar cycle on Thursday, February 27. The moon will be waxing from that new moon all through the rest of Pisces and ingress Aries by March 1st, this Saturday. Be waxing all through Aries and ingress Taurus by next week. So for this week, the lunar energy and the circumstances are mostly about Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, but the overwhelming vibe is definitely Pisces this week with this Pisces stellium and Pisces new moon. We also have a lot going on with Mercury this week. Mercury is conjunct Saturn today. Then Mercury is moving forward and will make a sextile to Uranus. Mercury will then enter its retrograde shadow by March 1st this weekend. And that just means that's where Mercury will retrograde all the way back to and station direct down the road. But it kind of sets off this overall bigger Mercury retrograde phase. Even though Mercury is not retrograde, technically it's still in the process of starting that phase. And then Mercury is also conjunct the North Node of Destiny this week, exact by March 1st, this weekend. So it could be fateful information, fateful communications, and conversations that has a long-term effect on the future in some cases. And then on that same day, March 1st, we have Venus stationing retrograde. So Venus has been stuck here a few days at 10 degrees already. It's going to be stuck here a little bit longer and then slowly build up momentum backwards. So everything about Venus is going through a process as well, relationships and money and value. I'll talk about that. And then it looks like we have Mercury also reaching Neptune at the end of Pisces, this critical degree as well. And that's going to be by Sunday, March 2nd. And then by next week, March 3rd, Mercury ingresses Aries. So next week is going to be very different from this week. But this week, it's all about Mercury and Pisces. And it will make an improvement by next week as it ingresses Aries, because Mercury is not at its best here, especially next to Saturn and Neptune and the North Node. Mercury's in a tough spot here, actually. But I'll be talking about it and what we can expect from it all. So those are the main aspects. The biggest event, obviously, is the Pisces new moon. And then I would say Venus stationing retrograde. So Mars is now direct, but it's still stuck here at 17 degrees, has to build up momentum forward. So again, if you have personal planets around 17 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, then you're under this hard Mars transit. And even though it's direct, it's still Mars. In fact, it can be even more powerful now that it's direct. So if it's making a hard aspect to you, just kind of be aware of that, lay low, take good care of yourself, especially if it's the sun. In my case, this Mars has been stuck in a long-term square with my sun. So that can affect health and just vitality and a little bit of edginess going on in the background. Sometimes there can be some conflict as well. So just be very careful, if you are under that Mars transit. It'll start building up momentum eventually and start moving away by next week. Next week and then beyond, it'll start moving away from this position. But overall, it's still in a pretty good harmony phase with all this Pisces, but still in a wide orb square, not totally wide orb, just a few degree square to Chiron as well. All right, so I'm going to go through this chart, and as always, check the description. All these aspects and timestamps will be written out for you below. All right, let's start here on Tuesday, February 25. The moon is currently at 7 degrees of Aquarius, and the sun is at 7 degrees of Pisces. So this is where the moon is entering the dark moon phase. But it's all about Aquarius for now, closing out Aquarius. And when we're entering the dark moon phase, it's about preparing for the new, which will be this next couple of days. But even though it's the dark moon phase, the moon in Aquarius is still more outward and social, much more than it will be in a couple days when the moon is going through Pisces and we have this, all this Pisces in the background going on. So the moon in Aquarius just shows people are a little more independent in this phase. They want to be a little more independent. Things did start off a little more heavy earlier in the morning because the moon was conjunct Pluto as it just ingressed Aquarius in the overnight hours. So a kind of a mood change, transformation, kind of an edginess, a power control dynamic. But it's also about group and community and friends. And then people's emotional responses may not be on board with what you would expect someone to react like, or yourself, or how you feel. People generally want to be a little more detached in this phase. It's more intellectual and communicative and social. Now, with that said, the moon, Pluto, and then Mercury conjunct Saturn, that's already perfected. Mercury, has some decent speed here moving away from that Saturn, but we can consider Mercury, Saturn all day long. So today it's like serious mental energy, serious communication, serious things on the mind. For some people, there could be some mental pressure and some stress and some worry and some fears that are coming up. So really take a hold of that if you are in that class of people, under the more difficult fear and worry. Try to keep it in context. Try not to let it run away. Also, be very careful of imagination getting out of control in a negative way. I'll talk more about that when we get to the Pisces new moon. But just be careful, of your thoughts, your feelings. Try not to get too depressed in some cases for people with Mercury conjunct Saturn. But again, because Mercury is moving fairly quickly away from that Saturn, I don't think it's going to be overwhelming today with that. Plus, with the moon in Aquarius, it allows people to easily, detach, like I said. So even though we had those two hard aspects in the first part of the day, the evening hours of tonight looks like it's going to be pretty sweet here because the moon will be sextile Venus this afternoon and evening, applying towards that sextile. And then the moon is also applying towards a trine with Jupiter in Gemini here by tonight for the last aspect. So tonight after, it's about right before 4 o'clock in the evening on the West Coast. So it's going to be tonight on the East Coast in the overnight hours, early morning hours in the UK and other parts of Europe. There is kind of a sweet aspect here where there's a lot more cooperation, more optimistic thinking and feeling potentially, and easier to get what we want. But because the moon is sextile Venus, let me move this forward here by the hour. So as the moon is applying towards that sextile with Venus, it is a sweet aspect, but it's the moon in Aquarius and Venus in Aries stopped, not moving, preparing to go retrograde here. So it still has a strong need for freedom and independence and doing what you want in this dynamic. So it's not overly it still has a potential social dynamic here because the moon is in Aquarius. Groups, friends, community, politics, all that stuff is really amped up. This is also the sign of science and technology. But connecting to Venus, there's just a better social dynamic here for a couple hours this evening and tonight, depending on your location. So more satisfied with people, getting along with people a little better, relatively speaking, here tonight. And then it could also be good for if you're trying to enjoy yourself with something. Circumstances could be a lot more enjoyable this evening and tonight. And then with the moon applying towards that trine with Jupiter by the end of tonight, it's great for social communication, social activity, networking. Now, this is tonight on Tuesday, and it is going to be exact by 6:32 p.m. on the West Coast. So again, tonight on the East Coast and late in the overnight hours for other people. But I like that aspect. It does feel like it could feel more optimistic and enjoyable tonight. It's still intellectual. This is all about air, and enjoy the air while it lasts because again, we're closing out this air, and then the moon will be in Pisces, all about the water, and we'll just have Jupiter in the air sign. But at least it's Jupiter, a big planet there. But we don't have a lot of Earth going on, especially once we get to this Pisces new moon. That's what we're really lacking, is Earth being grounded and practical and logical and earthly. because Uranus doesn't really count for, Earth, but we do have one planet in Earth at least. All right, so that's what I see for tonight. Again, I'm liking this evening and tonight overall. Now, with that said, because Mars is so powerful in the stationary direct, it's not just a one-day thing. Mars is very strong last week and this week. So, I know it is positive for Mars to be stationing direct, so we can get things done, start moving forward. I'm not sure how energetically, motivating it is because of Cancer and all this Pisces. It's still a lot about water, emotions, and feelings about things. But because it's Mars, you still need to be aware that it's very strong and it can stir up problems as well in the background, especially if you have a square or an opposition from Mars right now in your birth chart. All right, so this is Tuesday. The morning starts off pretty heavy, a little bit intense and transformative. It's all about the social dynamics, friends, groups, community, networking, learning. It's more intellectual, detached, and that's the overall vibe for the rest of today. And then we get to Wednesday. On February 26th, the moon is halfway through Aquarius, making an inconjunction to Mars for the first aspect early morning. So the moon is ruling this Mars, and it's at odds with Mars. So Mars here in Cancer, like I said, it's more about being emotionally driven, emotionally reactive, being guarded and protective of yourself and others and your loved ones and your property and your place and your home. It's just a very kind of emotional, intense placement. And the moon, it doesn't like that. The moon wants to be intellectually detached. It's showing people want to be that way when the moon is in this position here, typically. So we have to make adjustments between action, home and family stuff, property, feelings, needs, versus groups, friends, community. So there's like two different dynamics. There's the more outward social dynamic, even though the moon is dark here, has no light, and people are generally preparing for the new, there's still an adjustment between the inner life as well. But only for a few hours there, first thing in the early morning. And then the moon is sextile Chiron there. That's still pretty early, first thing in the morning here. But that can help people feel a little more confident in themselves. Still a need for freedom and independence, but I think that mood will kind of start to change here pretty soon. And then the moon is square Uranus first thing on Wednesday morning. Well, looks like it's going to be afternoon, actually. So the afternoon hours could be a little more volatile, dynamic, changeable. Change of mood is likely, in some cases, change of plans. Again, this is just a really short little aspect as we go through this every week, as you know. These things don't last very long when we're talking about the moon. So it's not going to dominate the whole day, but it does look like just be prepared for the afternoon hours to go through some possible changes, surprises, or disruptions. And then the last aspect is going to be the moon in conjunct to the south node here. And that's going to be on Wednesday night. Even that moon square Uranus could kind of set the tone for the rest of the night on Wednesday. So a little bit crazy, unpredictable, possible disruptions, and having to adjust to other matters wherever you have Virgo in your chart, having to adjust to things of the past, things that are unfinished, work, service, practical things, health issues. Might have to make some adjustments for some people here on Wednesday evening, Wednesday night. And then the moon is pretty much staying in Aquarius all night long and reaching a critical degree by late on Wednesday night. And then we get to the following day on Thursday, February 27, and the moon ingresses Pisces for a change of mood. And it's going to be this new moon day that we'll be building up to. So everything really changes from Thursday on. Once the moon ingresses Pisces here, things get much more sensitive. Let's align this with the sun, and I'll talk about the new moon chart. New moon is going to be at 9 degrees. Let's look up the minutes. 9 degrees, looks like 40 minutes. And this is going to be in the evening on Thursday. So for most of the day on Thursday, the moon is still in the dark moon phase before it technically reaches the new by 4:45 in the evening on the West Coast. So again, it'll be Thursday night in other places and early morning if you're in the UK, looks like. But this is still going to be kind of new moon vibes all day as well, and then into the following day. But we also have Mercury making the sextile to Uranus on this new moon as well. So just looking at this new moon, it's in Pisces, so this is the cycle that I call the beginning of the end. And I call it that because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac and Aries is the first sign. So we've been in a Piscean era. I've talked about this so many times with this Neptune in Pisces since 2011 into 2012. It's been a certain era, and that era is closing out. And this is the cycle that wants to close out this overall Pisces era that we've been in. Saturn is a part of that as well. Saturn is, bringing everything down and making things more practical, as best we can in this Pisces realm of things, which isn't very solid or clear. But Saturn is a part of the closing out as well. And that's a bigger process for this Pisces for the rest of 2025. And then it'll kind of be done once we get to 2026. But this is the Pisces cycle of 2025 here. That's the behind the scenes, the last sign, closing things out, preparing for even a bigger new when we reach the Aries cycle. But we're not there quite yet. And then as we enter this new moon, we're also entering eclipse season now, because we're not going to have a full moon in 2 weeks. We're going to have a Virgo eclipse in 2 weeks. So this is the beginning of wild card season, unpredictability, changes that could have a long-lasting effect on the future for good or bad, depending on how it aligns with your chart. So check out your chart and look to see where you have the sign Pisces in your chart. So it doesn't matter if you don't have any planets in Pisces. Everybody has all the signs within the self. Realize that. I know that as individuals, we can have some judgments against certain signs, but the truth is we all have all 12 signs within us. It's just a matter of how much do we have of those signs. And if you have no Pisces, then you're not really a Pisces person, but you still have a certain area of your life that's dominated by Piscean energy. And so that's where this new moon is, wherever you have your house of Pisces in your birth chart. That's where this new cycle is. That's where the focus is in this new beginning. And that area of your chart is coming to a close from the Piscean era, the Neptunian era that we've been in. So wherever you have Pisces, that area wants to be refreshed, and it's going to be refreshed. And please know, if you're a Pisces sun, please don't get down with me talking about, it's not personal. I'm not talking about individuals with Pisces. So when I'm talking about all the mess that this Pisces era has shown the world, it's not about you. Yes, you've been affected because you have Pisces planets, but it's not about individuals. It's about the collective. It's about the bigger picture, the mundane level that I'm looking at all this Pisces. So don't be offended if you have Pisces when I talk about it. Because I love Pisces people. It all depends, especially if Venus is there. That's a great place for it. But anyway, the point of this is that this is a very messy cycle. Well, it's been messy for a very long time, but this cycle, check your chart. First of all, where it's at by location, but also check if you do have personal planets in Pisces. If you have any personal planets at 9 to 10 degrees, then this new moon is exactly conjunct your personal planet in Pisces, and there is a new beginning for what that planet is in your chart. So it all depends on what that planet is, but if you have a personal planet there, this new cycle will be much more significant for you. And then if you have 9 to 10 degrees of Sagittarius or 9 to 10 degrees of Gemini here, and then 9 to 10 degrees of Virgo, then this new moon is going to challenge those personal planets in your chart a little more. Now, this particular cycle, it's going to be a little bit over amplified and over the top with what happens over the next month. And that's because first of all, this new moon is in Pisces. Pisces is a Jupiter sign. It's a big sign that goes over the top with things, especially in ways that we're not always clear and we're not always seeing. But not only is it a big sign, but this new moon is ruled by Jupiter in Gemini. And this new moon is square Jupiter, within a few degrees here, showing that this whole entire cycle will have a lot of tension about growth and expansion, maybe too much, very quickly happening with all this. And then there's also tension here between the media, communications, information, traveling and transportation and education. All the more logical, the more analytical stuff, the more intellectual side of life is at odds with all this Pisces because it's more about feelings, energetic sensitivity, and Pisces is not solid. So this isn't a very solid cycle. It's dealing with other dimensions of things. Everything behind the scenes is where the focus is. Now, with that said, we're still likely going to see a lot of stuff, that's been buried, that's been hidden. I talked about this last week. And I know you're going to put this in context to the United States and everything that's happening. And that's true. You have to look at the world of reality and what's actually happening in the world, and you have to find it in the astrology. We can't really make up stories about the astrology that doesn't fit reality, so that's why I'm saying the things I'm saying, because it's correlating with the world and what's happening with the world when I talk about all the hidden things behind the scenes that are coming out more and more now that the sun is in Pisces, putting the spotlight on everything that's hard to see and hidden. And this is a cycle about conspiracy and scandals as well. Scandals are going to be coming out more and more as the sun is going through here, as the sun is applying towards Saturn. When the sun reaches Saturn, we have an eclipse. And eclipses are, events that bring out things that were hidden, the dark side. So it's not only is it an eclipse, but it's also Pisces. It's really talking about trying to see hidden things. And you can apply that. Yeah, we can look at it in the world context of what's happening of, government and all the scandals and stuff in the world that's being talked about. But you can apply it in your own chart as well. So where do you have Pisces and Virgo? Those two areas are trying to be cleaned up. You're trying to see things that you weren't very clear about in those areas. So for example, if Pisces is your 7th house of partnership, well, then you've had a very rare transit of Neptune in your partnership house for years that's been distorting your values of people and bringing you people that aren't the typical type of relationship that you would be attracting. So it's kind of been a messy area for relationships if you're Virgo rising, for example. So there's a need to see more clearly about people and relationships, but we can apply this to wherever it is in your chart. If it's in your 10th house of career, well, then your career has been kind of fuzzy and foggy and lack of clarity for a while. And now all this is trying to get you to see things about your career, about your goals, your ambitions. Or it could be about your home life. It could be about your money. It could be about any of these 12 areas of your chart. So just put it in context to your birth chart and know that it's about seeing what's hidden, seeing, deeper and what's behind the scenes. But it's also energetically sensitive. This is all about intuition, especially with this Mercury now moving away from Saturn and applying towards Neptune. Especially when Mercury reaches Neptune, that's going to be super intuitive. So again, Mercury's not at its best. It's not about logic as much or being super analytical in this phase and trying to get down to all the details. In fact, that could be part of the tension that this new moon cycle is also talking about with Jupiter and Gemini. The details, versus all the scandal or mysterious things that are hard to calculate, get down to the details of truth and understanding of what's really going on in some cases. So, that's one way, especially on a mundane level, everything you're seeing is going to continue about exposing, about highlighting things from behind the scenes. But also intuition and feelings of things and oversensitivity, hypersensitivity is very possible within this cycle. All right, and Now, it can also be a cycle it's going to be super creative and imaginative for people. So this is where people are kind of in their own world in this cycle, behind the scenes, doing what they want to do. It can be a cycle for some people of kind of escapism into what they need to feel better about life. So it can be negative in some cases, positive in other cases. I think, though, with Mercury, Saturn, and the Mercury trine Mars and Mars stationing direct, I think there's still a need to be working on productive things from behind the scenes as well that may not be as obvious in the short term. Eventually, it will when everything's coming out into Aries. So be working on structuring, working on plans and ideas. But as the week goes on, the thoughts might get a little more challenging as Mercury's applying towards North Node and Neptune. And yet it's also very fateful and destined, as I said, as we'll be building up to that. But it can also be, especially for astrology people, this is a metaphysical phase, spiritual astrology, other forms of, divination in your spiritual world. I think that's going to be a strong pull for people. And let's see, this could also show certain events that could play out within this whole cycle at some point within the next month about, Navy situations going on, the ocean. There could even be some underwater stuff that gets exposed within this cycle. And that's just, generally in the mundane context that I'm trying to put in here a little bit. But let's see. Yeah, it's just really one aspect that this new moon has. The new moon is applying towards Saturn and then the Mars trine as well. So because Saturn is here, it's not, that's a little bit too wide of an orb for me to say it's exactly conjunct Saturn, but Saturn is close and everything's going to be applying towards Saturn. So it's not just the typical Pisces new moon with all these different planets here. It's just Saturn is the overwhelming, more serious side of everything. And there is a practicality about that Saturn there as well for work and projects from behind the scenes, taking care of business, and all of that. But this is also a cycle, like I said before, where people need to recharge their energetic batteries, recharge their spiritual batteries, prepare for the true new beginning when we get to the Aries cycle. Because this is the last sign of the zodiac. We've been around the entire zodiac. It's about, symbolically being tired, needing to rest, recharge, and prepare for the new. So it's going to be a super creative cycle. I think music is going to be something. I do feel like there's going to be a new era for music that comes in. Maybe a new style or something that comes in, because we've been in a music cycle from the late 80s into the early 90s that's going to be closing out. And usually when that cycle closes out, there's a new era for music that comes in. But with Mercury applying towards Neptune this week, it's also can be really great for music and producing and being creative as well if you have any creative projects going on. But this is overall the new moon here on Thursday. It sets off this new cycle for us. That's a little bit over amplified, over the top for this whole cycle. So that just means everything is going to be big. There's going to be a lot of news, a lot of information about all this hidden stuff from behind the scenes that the Jupiter square will be showing as time goes on here. So that's what we have on Thursday. It's all about Pisces and the new beginning, the beginning of the end, until we fully come into this new era later on this year. All right, so let's move this forward and we will get to, looks like Friday here, Friday, February 28th. The moon is halfway through Pisces and applying towards Saturn, but also the trine to Mars. It'll actually be the trine to Mars first and then the conjunction to Saturn. So this is actually pretty good time to be working on things, setting your intentions, of what you want to happen within this cycle, but being productive, working on things, seems like has a pretty good alignment for that. But the moon next to Saturn is still going to be showing things are serious, things are heavy. And like I said, because we're coming into eclipse season, wild card season, and we're going to reach that lunar eclipse in 2 weeks, opposite Saturn, Saturn is going to be truly the main focus for this whole eclipse cycle. So it's all about the serious things of life. And people are really feeling that and picking up on that here on Friday morning. But then the moon will cross over that, and the moon will reach Mercury. And also on that new moon the following day that I missed to talk about, Mercury sextile Uranus, it's also about the mind looking at alternatives, stepping outside the box with your thinking, with possibilities, being innovative and creative. So the more innovative you can be with stuff that you're doing, the better the results can be for you this whole week. And the moon will reach that and reinforce that aspect as well as time goes on here. So it is a little bit serious first thing in the morning. That could overall set the tone for the day. And then we're going to have the moon sextile that Uranus, like I said, and then apply towards Mercury. So reinforcing that need to be innovative and creative and try new things, stepping outside the box, be willing to change, and you can have good results. But also we're just generally more comfortable with changes too when the moon is in a harmony aspect with Uranus. It's less volatile and we're more on board with changes and surprises. And then the moon is conjunct Mercury, so it brings out a strong emotional need for communications, for information, a lot of mental stimulation, a lot of creativity and imagination being stimulated. And this is kind of going to set off this Mercury North Node as well, because now the moon is in between Mercury and the North Node. So destiny and fate is starting to come in around our thoughts, ideas, communications, information, media. All this stuff could be starting to become very fateful of what we're hearing or thinking about as we get into Friday night and then into the weekend here. But by Friday night, with the moon conjunct the North Node, it's a destined night. Whatever happens, for good or bad, it could have a long-term effect on the future, shaping our future, but especially in context to this Mercury, the mind, and how we're thinking and processing information. All right, so that's Friday. It's all about the Pisces, super energetically sensitive. There's a need for boundaries between you and others. And in general, there's a need to really build boundaries in this Pisces area of your chart, wherever you have it, because of the lack of boundaries since 2011 and 2012. And I also want to say that we're going to have to start interpreting this Neptune very differently once it gets to Aries, because Neptune does not rule Pisces. The outer planets don't rule anything. So this is a brand new cycle for Neptune once it gets to Aries, because it came around the entire chart, which is about 160 something year cycle. So we'll be interpreting it very differently, but Neptune in Pisces really amplifies and distorts all the stuff that Pisces already does that on a lower level, but Neptune made it on a bigger, grander level here since 2011. And so everything about that is going to be coming out more and more and more. But boundaries is necessary. Structure, order, boundaries, and that's what Saturn is trying to do for Pisces. And if you do have a lot of Pisces, you're going to love the new era, because you're going to be free and fresh, and all this energy that's been on you, really rare stuff is going to be done once you get to 2026 and beyond. And you're going to be feeling so much better than the past. And all of us are going to be feeling so much better than the past once all this is done and complete. All right. So, the moon with Neptune, but that's not going to be until the next day on Saturday, March 1st, first aspect is the moon at this last critical degree with Neptune, super sensitive, imaginative, but everything's about to change. So this is not going to be the main vibe here of Saturday, March 1st, because then the moon will ingress Aries, and that really changes everything as far as feelings and the mood coming out into this fire sign. Now it's ruled by Mars here in Cancer, and now the moon and Mars have a mutual reception for the next 2.5 days, making both emotions and feelings and Mars, the drive, the passion, a lot stronger than it otherwise would be. But it's still building a square with Mars at the same time. So there's going to start to be a lot of friction now between the self and home and family, generally speaking, or self, your own personal desires, your needs, your independence, and your freedom, versus family stuff, home, property stuff. And then on the bigger level of mundane astrology, the world astrology, this is the world point where everything is going to be moving into. So this is the first planet. Venus did it, but Venus is going retrograde back over that to come back to Pisces. So the moon here is kind of setting off this one by one where planets will be coming into Aries out of the Pisces eventually. So just, again, people are more emotionally impulsive, more emotionally reactive, generally speaking. Things speed up. Things become, quicker now with all this Aries. Let's see here. March 1st. Yeah, and then the moon, right as the moon comes into Aries, it's sextile to Pluto, so it brings more of an outward energy now, even though the main focus is still all about this Pisces behind the scenes, and the whole cycle is about that. But in this temporary phase for this weekend, people are wanting to be more outward, more social perhaps, and empowerment, emotional transformation starts to come in on Saturday morning here, really early though, for most people. And then this is where Mercury is conjunct the North Node of Destiny. So this is a destined day for, like I said, news, information, communications with anybody, conversations you're having, or just your general thoughts and ideas. Pay attention to those things on Saturday because it could be shaping your future. You may not see the results too. A lot of times these things show, or things can happen where people have no clue that it's fateful in some way, and then like 2 months later or whenever down the road, there's a connection to that point that leads to a change, of a destined change. But it's not always obvious right in the moment. So just pay attention to anything you're hearing or thinking about on Saturday, because Mercury will be coming back over this point to station direct eventually. So it's going to be a bigger process. And this is the day where Mercury's now entered its retrograde shadow on March 1st. So it's going to retrograde all the way back to 26 degrees and 50 minutes to station direct. But it's definitely a destined day here. And then this is also the day where Venus is stationing retrograde as the moon is applying towards it. So that makes Venus very, very strong. Everything about Venus is over amplified. So luckily it's the weekend, so the market will be closed. But we're already starting to see the shift for the market to the downside, which I gave you guys heads up a few weeks ago. I said that it would likely be going down soon for the next few months. And that's what I'm still thinking is going to be happening, so that we can go back up in the summer, in the fall. But everything about money, resources is becoming super amplified and stimulated here for people. People's own personal desires becomes really noticeable now that the moon and Venus are next to each other as Venus is stationing retrograde. But it also amps up everything about relationships. And it's not going to be, maybe not the best for relationships in this phase, because Venus is in a sign that it's not very happy in. And it's about the self. It's really about reevaluating what's important for you. I mentioned this before when Venus first came into Aries. It's about looking at what you truly desire, what you truly want, what's of value to you in this part of your life. Where do you stand with relationships? This is a time to kind of figure out relationship stuff. So if you're in a relationship and you're not quite sure about it, then this is a process to kind of go through this evaluation process until you're more clear by the Libra full moon, April 12, and then the last 2 weeks of April, Venus comes back to this spot and people are generally more clear about where they stand in love and relationship. Do they want to continue the relationship, take it to the next level, or are they ready to say no, that my freedom, that my independence is a stronger value for me right now in this part of my life than relationship? It all depends on the individual. It's not a universal thing here. Each person has to figure this out for themselves. And then if you're single and you're not even interested in relationship, that's fine. Sometimes, and I can't promise this, of course, this is very generalized, but sometimes Venus retrograde can also bring back past relationships, that come back around, especially when Mercury will also be retrograde. And both of those retrograde, that's a very strong indication that past people, past relationships could be coming back around for reevaluation in some cases. And then, in other cases, evaluate your self-love and where you stand with what you want, with what you desire, regardless of relationship or other people. And then with money and resources, it's a time to go through some sort of a financial process, especially in the world context, reevaluating our partners on the world stage. Like I said before, this is a process for the different countries, different nation states to be going through this value process of who's of most value and trade and all these kinds of things on the world stage. But it can also be individuals too, needing to look at their own financial situation. But look at where you have Aries. What is Aries for you in your birth chart? It's a certain area of your chart, regardless if you have planets there or not, you have Aries. And that area is where there needs to be this process of evaluation, both in your Aries and in your Pisces. So from now until late April, you'll be figuring that out in some context, where you stand with money, love, value, relationship, depending. But with Venus stationing, it can also amp up people's personal desires in this time frame as well. Strong desires for something, to get something. And with the moon there, it can be impulsively, this is what I want, and you just get up and go get it. I've always been that way, having my chart ruler Jupiter in Aries. That's a whole lot of Aries, and I've been pretty impulsive in my days, but my Capricorn moon allows me to, keep it pretty calm and not go overboard. But when there's times where I just feel it, instinctively, I want something, don't even think about it, go get it. But if I'm conscious and I think about it, then you're under a lot more control. So just know people's emotional reactions are just more instinctive, fired up and passionate, a little more bold, but also a sweet tooth or a need for some pleasure and some relationship here in a way that doesn't take away your personal freedom and independence, a short part of the day, not necessarily all day. So it all depends on the person, but those are the types of things I'm seeing for it. And then, so I'll say one more thing though. Check your chart. If you have a personal planet at 10 degrees of Aries, then this Venus retrograde is definitely important for you, depending on what that planet is. Okay, and then, like I said, the moon is conjunct Venus, and then the moon is sextile Jupiter. So it looks like on Saturday night, actually, this is still morning. Let me see when it's exact. Yeah, this is going to be Saturday evening, Saturday night for some people. So yeah, Saturday night looks like it's pleasurable, but you should still be a little cautious of this with these 3 Aries points ruled by Mars, and the moon is within orb of a square to Mars, building up that square. Even Venus and Mars have been in this wide orb square as well. They're both stuck here. They're not moving within a 7-degree orb roughly there. It's a wide orb square. So the feminine, the masculine, they're on 2 different pages. And the moon is going to go through that dynamic, kind of activating that tension, relationship tension, could be going through here, but it can also stimulate people's needs for desires and activity as well as you're going through Saturday night. And with the sextile to Jupiter for really late on Saturday night, the last aspect shows the capability of being more optimistic, more fun, outgoing as well. So I think overall it should be pretty decent on Saturday night, but the overnight hours of Saturday into Sunday could be a little more critical as the moon will square Mars. So we do get to Sunday, March 2nd, and this is where, the moon is activating the Mars Chiron square. So there could be some critical events in the overnight hours of Saturday into Sunday this weekend, potentially there. Just be aware of this aspect if you are dealing with it. It's the overnight hours here on Sunday. It looks like early morning hours when it's exact, but then first thing in the morning, the moon is also conjunct that Chiron. So the first thing on Sunday morning, it is a little bit tense, a little bit edgy, some emotions, a little bit of anger or agitation, sensitivity. There could be some confidence issues going on in some cases here, but there's definitely some friction. So be very careful on Sunday morning and let's just say Sunday. Just be careful on Sunday of accidents and injuries because the moon is activating that Mars Chiron. So accidents, injuries, try to slow down, try not to be overly impulsive, check your surroundings. If you are out and about, the moon will move through there for the second half of the day. But this is also the day where Mercury is conjunct Neptune. So definitely be careful on Sunday because the mind is not looking at the details. People could be a little more spaced out, and not paying attention to things as the moon is going through the Chiron square Mars. So Sunday, definitely be a little more cautious. And then Mercury reaching the last degree as well, this critical degree on Sunday. But with Mercury, Neptune, it creates strong imagination, fantasy, storytelling, intuition, music, film, photography, highlights divination, just more of this wanting to have a connection to a higher power. But with Mercury, Neptune, it is great for music and spiritual activities, but it's not that great for the details of things. So that's where you have to be very cautious. Plus, the sun is square Jupiter on this day as well. So everything is over the top on Sunday. So moderation is needed as well. And with the mind, with Mercury here, again, it's moving pretty quick and it's already past Neptune by, the afternoon hours. It's already reaching the critical degree, a sense of urgency and an ending with our mind. The mind is highly stimulated, but the mind is about to go through a pretty big change here. And Mercury is ruling Jupiter in this square. The sun in Pisces ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter ruled by Mercury, Mercury ruled by Jupiter. So Mercury and Jupiter have been in a mutual reception, but it's still not the greatest because of all these planets that Mercury has been connected to. But Mercury is about to change. So something changes here on Sunday based on whatever played out. So there could be big egos going on here. There could be issues with news and media, transportation, traveling could be an issue here around this time frame. And again, it's not going to be like the whole world, obviously. So most people are going to be okay with traveling, but there could be, events on the news that get the headlines and stuff, traveling, transportation, or other critical information that comes out here that's a little bit over the top. So we're not in balance. This is a day of the world that's really out of balance in a lot of ways. So just, again, try not to be overly impulsive with what's driving you on this day and try to tone things down a little bit. And then the last aspect is the moon in conjunct to the south node. So having to adjust health issues, work, service, other practical matters of life we have to adjust to. A little bit of an irritation there, perhaps. So Sunday is not looking all that great, actually. And then we get to Monday, March 3. We have a pretty big change as two planets change signs. We have Mercury ingressing Aries and the moon ingressing Taurus. So really big change by next week here. Now the mind does become a lot stronger, but remember, it's in its retrograde shadow, and from this point on, Mercury will start to slow down now because it was going pretty fast there. It's going to start slowing down, and like I said, it's only going to 10 degrees, 9 to 10 degrees, and Mercury will station retrograde when that moon comes all the way around and reaches the Virgo eclipse in March here. That's when then that eclipse will be ruled by Mercury stationing retrograde. But it's still a temporary change about the Pisces versus the Aries, this bigger picture of what we're moving into. But we're just not done with all the Pisces. We still have stuff behind the scenes that we have to take care of. So we're not quite there yet with the Mercury retrograde, but it kind of is starting this process. And now with Mercury in Aries, people are a lot quicker with their communication. They're sharper, more impulsive talk and communications, a little more fiery and passionate communications. It's all ruled by Mars down here. But the better change is that the moon will ingress Taurus here where it's considered exalted. Although, as you know, now for the next 20 years, every time the moon comes into Taurus, it has to square Pluto in Aquarius. But now that the moon is in Taurus, circumstances and the mood is ruled by Venus, retrograde. But still, the moon here shows people want to generally be more stable, more secure. Things want to slow down a little bit, even though the mind is really amped up still. Circumstances and the mood want to be more indulgent, slower, stable. But a little bit of emotional intensity has to come in for the last aspect, really, that sets the tone for Monday. Because this really is the last aspect for the day on Monday, is the moon square Pluto of a forced change, a forced transformation. Financial stuff going on here versus the group and the community as well. That's a little bit intense. So this could really set off the market by next Monday. I believe it's open, but it kind of sets the tone because it's the last aspect until the moon reaches the sextile with the sun for Tuesday. So all day on Monday, the early morning hours looks like the hardest part with the moon square there. Yeah, the first thing in the morning is the hard part. So as the day goes on, the moon is just in between everything, but it's calming down. Things are going to get a little better probably as the day goes on Monday, stabilizing the mood and the feelings and the circumstances, building up the sextile to the sun by Tuesday. So let's just take a look at Tuesday. I'll be back, of course, hopefully. You never know, but that's my plan. So just taking a quick look here on Tuesday. Yeah, the moon will be sextile Mars and sextile the sun and Saturn. So that dynamic will come in a little better. And then the moon will be conjunct Uranus for the last aspect on Tuesday, a week from today. But again, I'll come back. I'll talk about next week's report. So really, it's just mostly about all this Pisces and this Aries this week. In the next couple of days, we're closing out that Aquarius. So let's check my time here. All right. So that's pretty much what I have for you folks. Doesn't look too bad. I think a lot of the things we're already seeing will continue. Again, about exposing what's been hidden behind the scenes and wherever you have Pisces. All right. You guys take care. Thanks for watching. Have a good week.